Hello, all you beautiful people. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to the show. I am Hyde, and this is Hide and Seek Media. Today we're talking about the death of the Big 12, thanks to Oklahoma and Texas jumping ship and joining the SEC. We're going to talk about all the effects that's going to have on the Big 12 and the other conferences, and we're also going to be talking about the NIL legislation that the NCAA has passed just last month, which enables all college players to get paid for their name and likeness and image usage while they are playing college football. So we're going to talk about that, how it affects this move, and as a bonus, I'm going to tell you guys the group of collegiate players I think is going to benefit the most from this NIL legislation. So make sure you tune into the end to find that out. I appreciate you guys watching, and let's get into it. All right, so the death of the Big 12. This is it. All right, we are witnessing the beginning of a slow death to the Big 12, right? Texas and Oklahoma decided that it was in their best interest to move to the SEC. And we'll get into why it benefits them here in a minute. But what I really want to talk about in the beginning here is the death of the Big 12, right? This move is going to kill this conference in the next 2 to 3 years because they are the bell cows of this conference. There is no teams greater in the Big 12 than Texas and Oklahoma. And now that they are jumping ship and running to the SEC, it looks like your top teams in the Big 12 now are Iowa State and Oklahoma State. Well, neither one of those colleges are going to be able to carry a complete conference, right? And now that the conference is only 8 teams, it's really going to struggle to bring in the kind of financial numbers that conferences like the ACC, the Big Ten, and the SEC all bring in. I mean, the SEC brought in like $740 plus million last year. The Big 12, $400 plus million.
How the fuck am I going to get your money now?
So there's a big discrepancy there, right? And there's only 6 teams difference between the two conferences. So right now, I think this is the beginning of the dissolvement of the Big 12. And so if we look at it from that perspective, let's look at where each of these teams are going to go if they do leave the Big 12. So you have Oklahoma State, which I think would benefit Oklahoma State the best if they moved to the Pac-12, along with TCU and Baylor. Those 3 teams to the Pac-12 would strengthen the Pac-12 and give each one of those teams an opportunity to win that division, because the only teams they'd really have to fight with are USC and Oregon. And I would say that Oklahoma State and TCU are at least comparable to Oregon when it comes to programs, and maybe even just a notch below USC at this point. So I think those 3 teams going to the Pac-12 would be a good move. Okay, then you have West Virginia and Texas Tech. I would move those teams to the ACC. Put West Virginia back in their own backyard, playing Virginia Tech and Virginia again on a regular basis. Then you get Texas Tech, 2 solid programs who can add to the stature of the ACC and actually be competitive in that conference. That leaves Kansas State, Kansas. Obviously, we're going to move them to the Big Ten because you got to move them somewhere. And the Big Ten already has quite a few big colleges. So Kansas State, but Kansas is a dud. So we throw in a dud with Kansas State, which is kind of a dud. But you add them to a solid conference that's the second strongest behind the SEC, if you ask me. So they should get the least strongest teams because all these other teams didn't get to pick the fact that Oklahoma and Texas chose the SEC, right? And the reason why I say this dissolvement isn't going to happen until 2023, maybe even 2024, is because the Big 12 still want to kind of see, having Oklahoma and Texas on their, on their broadcasting and in their conference, because I don't believe that Oklahoma and Texas are going to pay the $76 million each it is going to cost them to leave the Big 12 and go to the SEC before 2025 when their contracts expire. So I really don't believe that this is going to make it all the way to 2025, but I also don't believe that this is going to happen next season. All right? So I really think that 2023, 2024, 2023 probably is where I'm going to say, I feel the most comfortable saying that the Big 12 will be dissolved altogether, will be 2023. I don't know if the moves I suggested are going to pan out, but that's just how I see breaking up the final 8 teams and spreading them out over the other 3 conferences and giving us a Power 4 instead of a Power 5.
Are you not entertained?
This really all started when you had Nebraska, Missouri, Colorado, and Texas A&M all jump ship from the Big 12 in 2012, 2011, 2012. They all decided that they wanted to move on. But the loudest opponent to this move of Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC is Texas A&M, the one Texas team that did leave the Big 12 and join the SEC. I don't know why they're crying about it. Probably because they wanted to be the only Texas team in the SEC. Well, that's not going to happen. It looks like this is going to go through. And like I said, 2023 is when it's going to happen. So Texas A&M just needs to suck it up. This is going to happen. So here's a few reasons why I believe these schools went ahead and did this. All right, so Texas leaving the Big 12 and going to the SEC makes sense because they have their own network. And they've been kind of struggling to put together solid teams back to back to back, for a few years now. So it seems like moving into the SEC would be a smart thing for them financially, and it would help better their recruitment. I mean, even though they get quite a few good recruits out of Texas, it would definitely bolster their recruitment. But I think the only reason why Oklahoma made this move is because there's also a 12-team playoff proposal being put on the table that the NCAA is going to vote on either this year or next year. All right? And so it doesn't make any sense for Oklahoma to leave the Big 12 if it's only a 4 playoff spot, if it's only a 4-team playoff. They can skate through the conference every year, win the championship, and go to the playoffs. That's almost a guarantee in a 4-team playoff. But with this 12-team proposal that they're talking about, either voting on this year or next year, with this 12-team proposal, it doesn't really matter if you win your division or win your conference or not now, because there's 12 playoff spots that you can get. Oklahoma can hold their own in the SEC. They've already proven that. So moving to that conference and still being able to make it in the top 3 of that conference or even the top 12 in the country is feasible for Oklahoma. So that is why I say that this is the only reason why I see Oklahoma moving to the SEC outside of financial reasons is because they're going to a 12-team playoff, so they don't have to worry about winning the conference, and because recruiting is now going to be better because now they're playing in the toughest conference in college football. So I think one of the major factors in both of these teams jumping to the SEC from the Big 12 was recruiting. And another thing that is a big factor when it comes to recruiting in the NCAA is the NIL legislation that has been passed recently. As of last month, any college player can now earn money off of their name, image, or likeness as long as it's not from the school. So if they want to if a local car dealership wants to pay them $10,000 to put their name on a billboard, they can now accept that money with no penalties from the NCAA. So now you're telling me that Oklahoma can now be in the powerhouse conference, have the most dominant offense in college football, and be able to recruit defensive players now better than they could have in the Big 12 because they're playing in the SEC. And these players can make money off of their likeness and image. Come on. It's a no-brainer at that situation. This NIL legislation is a game changer for recruiting in college football, in college sports altogether, right? But in college football, it is definitely a game changer, because now, hey, you wanna hawk some cars for me? How about you do a TV commercial for me and I'll pay you 15 grand, right? And they get the star quarterback, Spencer Rattler, to do a commercial for a car company here in Oklahoma, in Norman, right? And now he's getting paid 15 grand, walking around with money falling out of his pockets. So if you can land a prominent school in a prominent conference and you can get paid for sponsorships, well, it makes sense for Oklahoma to make this move and get out of the Big 12, which is a lesser conference than the SEC or even ACC, and move into the number one premier conference and be able to recruit better players. My prediction is that you're going to see Texas and Oklahoma show up by 2023, 2024, when they are in the SEC. They are going to be powerhouse teams.
All the ways you wish you could be, that's me.
They are going to be powerhouse teams. So, with all that said, this NIL legislation is really beneficial to pretty much all college athletes. But there's one group of college athletes that aren't being talked about when it comes to this legislation. And I told you, if you watched at the beginning, I told you if you made it to the end of the video, you would hear this collegiate group. I'm talking about esports. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Right? There are a number of NAIA colleges that have varsity esports teams. But believe it or not, there's also a lot of Division I schools that have varsity esports teams. Schools like the University of Missouri, the Georgia State, Georgia Southern, the University of Oklahoma, Ohio State, just Boise State, just to name a few. Okay? Now, these esports players, collegiate athletes, as they're called, can now get paid by these gaming sponsors. So we're not just talking local sponsorships anymore. We're talking Microsoft. We're talking EA Sports being able to sponsor collegiate athletes and pay collegiate athletes. We are about to see a ton of collegiate esports athletes become rich overnight. It ain't about college football. Those guys are going to make money. Basketball players going to make money. Okay? But do you know how much money is in video games? We're talking billions of dollars. These collegiate athletes who play esports for these major colleges are about to make some big bucks because they can be sponsored by national companies. It doesn't have to be local. So these guys are about to make some serious dough. So in the end, I think the move for Oklahoma and Texas jumping ship and moving to the SEC is a good one. I don't think it's going to happen before 2023 because it doesn't make much financial sense in the short term, but we'll see how that goes. If you've made it to the end of the video, I appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you get notified anytime I drop a new video. Smash that like button. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about this video and the topic. I love to engage with all my viewers, so every comment is welcome. If you like this content and you think other people should see it, make sure to share this video. I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers, and the only way I can do that is if people like you share my video and get more people to come watch it. So make sure to hit that share button and share it on every social media platform you can. I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch y'all later.